Eotech is a name that I shouldn't have to tell you about. You should already know who they are. Who they are, you might be asking? They are the makers of some of the nicest
Pew pew, pew pew,
holographic sights on the market. What is
pew pew pew.
a holographic sight as opposed to a red dot? A holographic sight uses some black magic fuckery to use lasers to basically make a perfect looking reticle like you see before you. In fact, if you have a very keen eye or you've gotten behind an Eotech over the years, you'll notice that the reticle looks a little bit grainy. Those are all those little dots coming together to form a reticle. In this case, we have a 1 MOA dot in the middle and a 68 MOA donut around it.
Pew!
That combination of that dot and that donut come together to make, if I had to
Pew!
put money on it, probably the most recognizable reticle in the world. But it's not all there for just show. It's there with a purpose in mind. I am no professional shooter or operator, but this reticle is great for going from a 0 on your dot of around 200 yards or so
Pew pew, pew pew.
to a much closer 0 like in CQB rolls at the bottom of the circle. It requires no real thought, super easy to deploy, and very easy to pick up. Anyway, let's see what comes inside the box.
Pew pew, pew pew pew.
No, I didn't get the boxes confused. I bought this used. That's right, I spent my own hard-earned cash on this thing. Did I buy it new? No. But if you wanted to buy one of these new, especially the EXPS 3, which I will talk about the nomenclature very soon, they run right around $700. But for those $700, you get this beautiful FDE coloration, and you get the 3-whatever nomenclature. The EXPS 3, as seen here, has the special night vision button. When you press that button, the reticle gets locked in a night vision mode and offers you 10 extra brightness settings that will not come out of night vision mode until you press that button again. Something that you will see very soon works extremely well. But see, I don't use night vision. I don't have a purpose for that button. What do I get? Well, you simply go with the EXPS 2-whatever. You save yourself around $200, and you can get them in the same coloration, either FDE or black. Now, what does the second number mean? In this case, it's 3-0. The 0 indicates it's only got one center dot. A 3-2 would mean it has two center dots, and a 3-4 would mean it has four center dots for holdovers at greater distances. I personally think they all get a little bit too cluttered. I specifically wanted a 3-0 because A, I was planning on using night vision, and B, I like only having a single dot with a 50/200 yard 0. And if red is not your thing, you can also get these in green, but I don't think you have as many reticle options as far as the dots go. As far as how this thing looks, I really like the FDE coloration. It's a little bit different as far as button orientation and overall setup from the XPS2 that I reviewed many, many years ago. That had rearward facing buttons, which I was not a big fan of, especially when you're running it with a magnifier, but this is much better set up with the buttons being on the side. As far as the weight, 11 ounces might seem like a bit much, but there is a lot of material on this thing and that really excellent QD lever that we're going to be looking at soon. In retrospect, a Holosun 512 Gold Dot comes in about 3 ounces lighter, but it doesn't have a QD lever and it is much smaller in stature on the height. Both of them have around the same size window, but you can very clearly tell that the 512 has a lot more tint than the EXPS 3. No, the Holosun is not a holographic sight. It's still technically a red dot, but it's a pretty good option, especially if you're not planning on using night vision. Another option that I pulled out of the table is the LP1 from Lead and Steel, which comes in a significant amount heavier, but it does have a much larger body and shroud to it. Like many modern electronics when it comes to firearms equipment, this takes a standard CR123A battery. The compartment is held on by this very large thumb cap, and it's got a nice big old fat O-ring in there, and it is tethered so you don't have to worry about losing it in the field. And if you plan on running a different battery, unfortunately, you're going to have to buy a different model. From there, checking out the turrets, and you can see that they were designed so smartly for use with a quarter.
You hear that?
I should also note each click is a half MOA.
You see that? See how big those jumps are? And look, the dots on the outside, a little hard to see, line up perfectly with a coin when you adjust it with a coin. It's almost as if they designed it like that. Fantastic. So smart.
If you couldn't tell, I'm very excited by how well thought out this thing is. Those little nuances like that really do add up to making this be very special. The QD lever is another such example. You have this wonderful locking QD lever that requires you to first depress that little button up towards the front, and then you could throw this lever. And it is fully adjustable. And when you make an adjustment with the screw head on the opposite side, that's actually got a ball detent underneath it. So when you make an adjustment, you have a nice positive click, and it's going to stay put exactly where it is. This body is also fully serviceable. I wouldn't recommend pulling it apart, but if you had to for some strange reason, you could. You know what, before I get ahead of myself, let's listen to that ball detent on this adjuster screw.
Very, very solid action on this. You adjust this to get the tension properly set for your rail. No, not all 1913 rails are the same.
I'll stop myself there before I go on another tangent. It is excellent. The last thing to talk about before we get behind this thing and really start playing around with it a little bit more is the used price for this. Because yes, the new ones for the EXPS 2-0 is around $500. The 3-0 as seen here is around $700. But if you're in the market for one of these things used, what could you expect to pay for them? The EXPS 3-0 as seen before you, I paid like $520 for used. No box, obviously, it came in a Trigicon box, but it was all there in perfectly working order. If you're looking for an EXPS 2-0, expect to pay like around $400. Now, if you are worried about warranty work, Eotech seems to be very good in this department. One big concern that a lot of people have when it comes to holographic sites like this is that the multiple layers of glass in between it start to delaminate, meaning that they start coming apart from one another. And when it does that, it gives this real oily looking sleek to the lens, and you can't really look through it all that well. Fortunately, everyone that I've known personally that has had that issue has had it fixed by Eotech, almost no questions asked. So if you are worried about this thing's longevity, I'm pretty confident Eotech's going to have your back as long as you literally don't put a bullet through it. But you know, maybe even then they will. Anyway, that's enough looking at this thing from this perspective. Let's get behind it and play around with that reticle a little bit more. At around this brightness setting with a good battery, you could expect about 1,000 hours of runtime. That doesn't sound like a lot, especially when Holosun optics are claiming 40 or even 50,000 hours sometimes with their technology. However, those aren't holographic sites like this. The emitters for this reticle requires a lot more energy, and as a result, it's going to chew up batteries a lot faster. However, let me put this into a different perspective for you. Not accounting for parasitic loss, if you were to use your Eotech EXPS 3 for 4 hours a day, it would last you 250 days. That's a pretty long time, all things considered, especially that when you do have to change the battery, it's really simple and easy to do so. As far as the brightness settings on this, there are 20 visible daytime brightness settings, and like I said, when you press the night vision button, you have a 10 extra amount of settings, so 30 brightness settings overall. Now, no, Eotech does not have an auto-off function, and it's just to keep things simpler. When things are simple, typically things don't break as frequently. Also, for anyone that is wondering, all Eotech products are proudly made in the USA. Let's see how well this thing does at a greater distance. Here, we are back in my old apartment. God, it's been way too long. Focusing on our 400-yard brick building. And what was that optic underneath it, you might be wondering to yourself? That was the Leupold Devo, or de-evolution. That is a very interesting prism that is designed to work in conjunction with a higher raised optic in front of it, like this Eotech, for example. It was designed specifically for the Leupold, the LCL, but any sort of optic like this will work. Now, that is a way that you could run this with an augmented prism to greatly increase your flexibility and capability, especially at distance. Another way of doing that is with something like this device, a magnifier. Speaking of magnifiers, what model am I using? It is the Holosun HM3X. It's a 3X full-sized, $150-ish now dollar 3X full-sized magnifier. And it works great. The only thing the only stipulation with it is its mounting footprint on the tilt-away mount, but Unity's solved your problem by charging you $400 for a mount that's you're probably never going to buy for your Holosun. Anyway, this thing magnifies extremely well. The HM3X is a great budget magnifier, and behind even shitty glass, it looks pretty good. But behind glass as nice as this EXPS 3, it is simply sensational. Now, you will note that the refresh rate on this dot might seem a little bit chaotic, but I assure you it's mostly due to the camera. You won't see any sort of rolling shutter with your naked eye. Another thing you're not going to be able to tell is distortion or color shift of any kind. The glass on this thing is flat, and I mean super flat. There's no weirdness to it. It doesn't warp, it doesn't bend light, it doesn't do anything of the sort. It is about as perfect as you could possibly get without actually just using your eye with iron sights. It's sensational. To make that live for you a little bit more, here's a better example of me just wiggling it around as far as I can in front of the camera. Another party trick with holographic sights is that the reticle will maintain the same size no matter where it is in relation to your eye. It's very strange how that works, but that's how it works. Another great thing about a holographic sight like this is that you have nothing coming from the front of your optic, meaning you don't have to worry about a little red emitter shining on someone that could possibly be in front of you. It's especially nice in those night vision rolls. That's right. But the glass is as good as you could ever expect glass to be. You can see it might look like it's getting a little bit darker on that tree in the middle, but nothing warps, nothing changes. It is, like I said, as good as it could really get. The dirt that you see on it is from many, many two-gun matches since buying this. Getting back behind the magnifier before we see its night vision performance, you can see the little grain to the reticle. That is nothing out of the ordinary. That's just how most holographic reticles are going to look. Again, the refresh rate that you see here before you is due in conjunction with the shutter speed of the camera, causing it to flicker and shift like that. Some people will say that they do have a bit of a refresh rate issue with the Eotechs. I haven't personally had that negative of an experience yet, and hopefully I never do. However, if you are the type of person that is very keen to picking that up, maybe check out a higher quality red dot. If you buy an EXPS 3-0 that's set up for night vision, you better damn well use it under night vision. I specifically bought this optic because Hoplophile said that the EXPS 3-0 is excellent for night vision use, and I really wanted a large windowed red dot of some sort to run with my AR. So what better way than to just combine everything into one and buy this? My night vision is just some sort of PVS Gen 3 in green phos. I'm using a Grec X recorder on this. We're at a little local range to me. And the reason why there's such a heavy shadow in front of us is there's a security camera behind me with IR illumination on it. So that's why everything is so bright. However, in these conditions, the reticle still looks amazing. I have a little bit higher on the brightness spec for the night vision roll, but it works out really well. I'm shooting this with a CMMG conversion, so I'm only shooting 22s here at about 10 to 15 yards or so. So more than safe enough. This is in preparation for Moons Out, Goons Out, and subsequently Midnight Brutality, which I did fairly well with, all things considered. Speaking of Moons Out, Goons Out, let's go to one of the darkest stages of my first night, which was also my favorite and the longest. This was pitch black conditions. Don't be fooled by what you see. This was completely overcast with supposed to be a full moon, but it was just horrible conditions. This is with the illumination almost all the way down, and despite the fact that our ambient light is so minimal, the brightness coming through the EXPS 3 is still quite good. The reticle, even in this super dim brightness setting, is still very sharp and clear and super easy to make out. It is by far and away my favorite reticle of all time, especially in a roll like this. A short 14.5-inch carbine, 5,200 yard zero, and this is about a 200 yard shot. I'm able to pick up where the T-posts are for those full-size IPSCs, and make pretty good shots with this. A lot of people that were running this were running it with illumination, which certainly would make things easier, but I like the whole thought process behind a passive roll. And the EXPS 3 is absolutely perfect for that. I could not ask anything more from this optic in whether it's pitch black conditions like this under nods or on beautiful, bright, sunny days. The last scenario is going to be the second night of Moons Out, Goons Out with a perfectly clear sky and a basic full moon. The conditions were completely different, but it still performs wonderfully, as it should, because these are much better conditions. There's, well, nothing else to really say. Its night vision performance is stellar. And that's going to take us nice and neatly to my final thoughts and conclusion. Take a look at the wonderful mid to late fall in New York back last year. It was really, really something. My final thoughts on this thing are as follows. This thing rocks. I don't really care that much about battery life because I'm not using it multiple hours a day. If you are the type of person that is going to be using their optic multiple hours a day, forever and ever, then maybe get something that's going to have better battery life. I mean, I think even like the aim point, like T2s have like 40 or 50,000 hours of battery life, something ridiculous. Go with something like that. I'm pretty sure the SIG 4TX XT Pros also have ridiculously long battery life. But this is not any of those optics. This is a thin, svelte, American-made, very large window holographic sight. And you're going to have to, unfortunately, give up some battery life for everything else that it offers. Now, I'm not saying that the other optics don't offer good performance in their red dot roll or even under night vision. I hear the XT Pro is excellent, and I hear T2s are still very good, even though they're 150 years old at this point. But if you're looking for a large window holographic sight, and you want something that's American-made, it's really hard to argue with the EXPS series, whether it's the 2- whatever, or in this case, the 3-0. I highly recommend the -0 or at most the -2, especially if you're not going to be using it with magnification, because the -4s just get so cluttered, and I don't like clutter. When you get behind one of those 4 dots sort of look like a line, and they just get in the way. Oh, there's my dot. That's my point of aim. Bang. I'm going to make a very fast follow-up shot if I need to. I love this thing. It's not coming off my AR. It's only going to come off if I have to compare it against something else, but it is sublime. It's everything that I could have ever hoped for in an optic for my setup, and it might be just perfect for you. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you all so much for your love and support. It really is great in these dire times. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you can still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.